This is The Intro, and I'm your host, Gus Summers. It's good to be back with you today. We are broadcasting live, that's right, from the entertainment capital of the world, Hollywood, and we are streaming live right now as well at theintro.com, so you can go there, click where it says live, and you'll be able to see this interview. And of course, we'll post this up later, and you'll be able to enjoy it one more time. But I'd like to give a big thank you to our in-studio guest, Mr. David Oman. David, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me, Gus. It's my pleasure, really.
Oh, you know, when we were connected, Mark Perlini.
Mike Politi, yes.
Great guy. He connected us. And you and I seem to have like an instant connection. You know, we hit it off. We've been in touch since we, first talked. And I love the fact that you live in a great house that has such paranormal activity. Not only that, you live in a neighborhood that is famous, infamous.
Infamous, I think is the word. I would say it's
for?
famous. And it's not even the neighborhood. It's just, the neighborhood's kind of infamous in its own right. But yeah, there's a lot of history to my neighborhood, as a matter of fact.
And that's amazing. And then you made a movie. You're a producer,
movie, yes.
So that's boy, so much to talk about. So I'll let you begin. Where would you like to talk about? The neighborhood, the house, the movie? Where would you like to go first?
Yeah, I guess we could start with the house and the whole backstory of the house.
Oh, beautiful.
That's probably the easiest way to go, and then we can go back in time to the historical significance of what took place, and then we can go present day and kind of backtrack my own footsteps of what I did.
Excellent.
With the movie. Let's see, about 14 years ago, my dad called me up and said, one fine Sunday morning, David, I've found a lot up in Beverly Hills that's for sale, and I want you to meet me there. And I'm like, it's 8:30 in the morning. What could be so special? He goes, it's $40,000. Meet me there at this address. So I drove up there, and when I got up the driveway, I started to sense this familiarity. And I said, God, it seems so vaguely familiar. And when we finally got to the spot, I looked down the driveway and I said, oh my God. I said, that's the Sharon Tate house, or at least that's where it was, where the Sharon Tate house was. And my dad said, I think so. This as a matter of fact, this is it. He said, and I looked at the lot and I said, oh my God. I said, this is $40,000? And he goes, yeah. Well, it was foreclosed upon. It was being sold by the bank because it was unbuildable. And as it turned out, my father did some research, and it was an issue with the city had misnamed this as a private street when it was really, in fact, a private drive. Which, to cut to the red tape, basically, it's the difference between having the city make the improvements on the street versus the homeowners making the improvements on the street. And the bottom line is it was buildable. So my dad bought the lot, and he and I built the house together, and it took about 3 years. And during construction, I myself had weird experiences in the house. On the site, I would be walking around, the walls were up, and there would be nobody there, and I'd feel this sensation of like a presence, of somebody being like behind you. You know, when somebody comes up behind you and they're going to sneak up on you, you just feel it, and the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, and you turn around and go, I caught you before you got me. And that happened a number of times at the house. And then at the end of the construction, a couple of weeks before we were done, I assembled all my laborers. And these guys were anywhere between the ages of, I think, 16. There was one kid that was 16, and the other 4 guys were about 21, 22 years old. And they were all Central American, how should you say, nationals. And they didn't know anything about the Sharon Tate murders. So I said to the guys, have you guys had any weird experiences? Because I figured this was a perfect opportunity to get a test pool that had no interest in the paranormal, knew nothing of the Sharon Tate murders, and therefore would be a perfect group to test subject-wise. If they had anything weird experience there, it wouldn't be, they would think, oh, it's Sharon Tate and this and that. So I asked them, and one of the guys said, yeah, I had this weird experience. It's 6 months ago. It's the middle of the summer. It's he says, I'm down there working, and I hear voices and footsteps coming from the top floor. Mind you, he's on the 3rd floor, so here's the top floor, which is the street level. There's a 2nd floor and a 3rd floor, and there's this huge 30-foot wrought iron spiral type staircase that leads to the bottom floor. So he says it's 6:30 at night. It's kind of, he's the last one there. It's the end of the day, and he goes upstairs and he looks and he goes, I find nobody on the property. I find nobody on the street. It's empty. So I go back downstairs, he says, and I start working. 5 minutes later, his voices and footsteps again. So he runs up the stairs, looks around the whole top floor, nothing there. Goes out in the driveway, looks around, he says, there's nothing there. He goes, that's it, I'm done. He says, I'm now packing my bags, I'm down the 3rd level, and all of a sudden, I hear these footsteps coming down the staircase. And he says they're getting louder and louder. And it got to the point where it sounded like, it got so loud it sounded like it was right outside the door. And at that point, he ran out, and he went right to the corridor there, and he says there was nothing there. And then all of a sudden, he says he feels this ice-cold, chilly breeze across the back of his neck. And as he said, the hairs on the back of his neck stood straight up. And he said, and I quote, dos míos, ya me boy, which means, oh my God, I'm leaving. And he left, and he didn't come back for 6 weeks. And I said to him when he was working, I said, what made you come back? He goes, he realized that he had been working for 3 weeks and he hadn't gotten paid. And I said, you know what's funny? He said, that's the time that the guys, your friends, had said that you were in El Salvador taking care of your mother in San Salvador who was sick. And he said, yeah. And I said, I only remember it because I was waiting for him to come in and do the tiles in the master bathroom. And I got so impatient, so stupidly, impatient about it, I decided to put the tiles in myself. Well, let's just say that as easy as it looks for somebody else to be putting in those tiles, there's a lot more skill and a lot more technique that's involved and expertise that's involved in putting in a set of floor tiles to make them look good. To this day, some of the floor tiles are close, some are a little bit more apart, some are a little higher than the others. I mean, it's a testament to the story that I'm telling you, that I can relate to the house and stuff. That's really kind of funny. And I said to him, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, and that he goes, that was the last time I ever left late. I always left early before everybody else from that point on. Funny thing is that I had an experience about 3 or 4 years ago, when I was on the 3rd level watching a movie with this date, and we heard a voice coming from upstairs. It's mid-March, it's freezing outside, so all the windows are shut, and we're talking and watching this movie, and she says, aren't you going to get the phone? So I said, oh, you mean that? Yeah, that was that voice coming from upstairs. It must be the answering machine. So I go in the other bedroom, I dialed the number to the answering machine extension, and I hear ring, ring. And I'm thinking, I didn't hear any ring, ring before I heard the voice. So I go back into the room, and I say to her, did you hear anything? What did you hear? And she goes, I heard a guy's voice. I said, okay, I just want to make sure. And she goes, what's the matter? So I'll be right back. I went through the whole entire house. All the windows are shut. All the doors are locked. The telephone says no calls for 3 hours. Answering machine has no messages. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, that's a first. I've heard the sounds of a man's voice coming from upstairs, and I've got a witness that will corroborate my story. So I go back downstairs, and I say to her, I said, well, that's interesting. She goes, what? I said, can I ask you a question? And level with me. I said, what did you hear? And she looked at me with a squirrely look like, what do you mean, what did I hear? She goes, what, are you kidding me? I was like, no, I'm serious. No, humor me. I said, what did you hear? She goes, I heard a man. I said, can you describe him? She goes, male. I said, well, man, male, late 20s, early 30s, Caucasian. I said, what do you want? I said, okay. I said, any type of accent? She goes, no. I said, because that's what I heard. And she goes, what do you mean? I said, well, when I left you, I went upstairs, looked through the house, all the windows were shut, and there was no external voices coming in from outside, and the machine said no messages. And you heard the telephone ring? And she goes, yep. I said, you heard the voice before the telephone? And she goes, I heard the voice before I heard the telephone ring. And she said, oh my God, you mean that was like a ghost? I said, yeah, I'm pretty sure what we both heard for 30 seconds was a ghost. She goes, no, it was a man having a conversation. I said, exactly. She freaked out and up and left.
And that was downstairs in your
theater room. In the theater room that we were in. Then you've seen the house.
Yes.
You've seen the staircase. And
right.
The staircase, as it was when we built it, there was no wall and a door leading down to the 3rd level. It was just open. So the sounds from upstairs would come cascading straight down into the room.
Right.
The day that I had this date, there was no wall. It was just a curtain. So you could hear the voices coming downstairs as readily as you and I talking right now.
Yes. And to describe your house a little bit, it's multi-leveled. You walk in at the top, which is your entrance. That's your top floor, and then you go downstairs to another floor, and then the 3rd floor is where you have a
guest bedroom and then a theater room.
And then there's that little other room that we'll get into as
There's
well.
the earthen wall room, yes, which
Yeah.
is an unfinished part of the house, which is on the other side of on one side of the house, behind the theater side, would be the heaters. There's a water heater and the central air is there. On the other side is again the hillside, which has been undeveloped, and this little alcove room, which again is undeveloped. So when you go in, you can actually see the underside of the hill.
Right.
And that in its own right has its own peculiarities, as you found out that night.
And what's interesting is, I loved how you described your staircase. It is basically like a conduit.
Right.
Because it's like 30, 40 feet of
It's
metal staircase.
30 feet
That
of
winds.
wrought iron. It's pretty much handmade. I mean, they built it there on site
Yes.
from literally pieces of wrought iron and built it. I mean, I watched the thing being constructed on site and I was so amazed. But yeah, it's basically about a 30-foot wrought iron, what do we call it? A pole. I mean,
Right.
when I say by a pole, it becomes in terms of a battery. If you were to take a battery, a D
Right.
battery, and you cut it down the middle, there's a metal pole that goes down the middle, which is a conduit. And some scientists have said that the house has a certain electromagnetic field anomaly that it sits on top of. And the way that the house is built with these two steel I-beams supporting the third level, about 10 feet from where the wrought iron staircase is, it basically becomes a coil. That's what he said. It's like a giant coil to a battery.
All right, that's yeah. And we all know about electromagnetic activity, so we know, we've all seen enough to know what that can draw. Man, I want to get
Right.
into our next
Sure.
segment. David, again, thanks for coming in. So, I mean, we've just barely scratched the surface of everything that goes on at your place. All right, thanks again.
My pleasure again.
All right.
Glad to be here.
Thanks. All right. Well, this is Gus Summers, and you've been listening to The In Show. And we have in-studio guest, Mr. David Oman. And we have just barely talked about what goes on at his home, which is literally 500 feet from
150 feet.
150 feet from the Sharon Tate state that some infamous murders happened back in the 60s. But we're going to get into that in our next segment. So you hang in there. We'll be right back. And this is The In Show. And I'm your host, Gus Summers. It's good to be back. We got a great in-studio guest with a great story, Mr. David Oman. David, thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Again, I'm happy to be here for you. And remember, in Gus we trust. To your audience and your viewers, you understand what I'm saying when I say in Gus we trust. You listen to him, you got to think about it. He's your eyes and your ears. You've listened to him, you believe in him, he's got your back, and he's the one that's taking you for a ride. So remember, in Gus we trust.
Wow. Boy, I like that. And I do have to say that it was David that brought that up. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
I got to coin that now. Fantastic, David. One of the things when we first talked was you were telling me about the house, and I'd been there. We actually was it a week before Halloween?
Week before Halloween, yeah.
We had a few people there. You had some people who would actually investigate hauntings. They were there filming, and they caught a little something on camera.
Yep.
I know I was streaming there on live. We had that on our in-show site, the Haunt Fest. Spent the good part of the evening there, and you have actual photos.
Yes.
Other eyewitness experiences. I know the two young ladies who were there. The Harley twins were there.
Justine and Jade Davis Brown.
That's it, and they've had experiences, and they have evidence and such. So it's well documented. I know, matter of fact, that you've had was it ghost chasers from Discovery?
Had the ghost hunters there. Had the people from the Ryan Institute, formerly of Duke University, that have investigated it. We've television show-wise, we had My Ghost Story was out there, Dead Famous Live, Searching for Satan, which are two UK shows. There's a new show coming out in January that shot there about 3 months ago for the people that produced the Ghost Hunters show have a new show coming out, and in January there's going to be an episode about my house. There's another show coming out in a couple of weeks. I think you might have heard of them, Paranormal Witness. That's going to do an episode, 1 hour episode about my house. Extra's been out there, TMZ's been out there, Larry King's been out to the house. James Van Praagh has visited. Lisa Williams has come on her own. So yeah, it's been visited by a great many people in the quote-unquote paranormal community.
You know, that was interesting. Van Praagh, I had a chance to meet him once. What was his sense when he went there?
James it had a pretty profound effect on James when he was there, especially as you recall the earthen wall room that we went into. Several of the psychics that have been in there, including Jackie Barrett from New York, came out there and have been there to the house, and each individual gifted sensitive that has gone into that earthen wall room has had their own experiences, and have always marked in mentally in my mind what I have noticed about the quote-unquote celebrated celebrity psychics. Lisa Williams was very, very calm and had a very, very positive outlook, and said, you know, there's an end. She just felt a presence in that room, and she was very, very easy going with it. When James Van Praagh came in there, I'll never forget. Van Praagh walks in the room, looks up at the hills, at the mound of the dirt there under the house, the hillside there, and I'll never forget. He goes, "I'm not feeling very good. It's getting a little tight in here." And it was uncomfortable for him, very, very physically uncomfortable for him. And he literally was in there for about 5-10 seconds and left the room. Just didn't feel comfortable in that room. And what's interesting is I have noticed that on certain occasions, you go in the room, and literally when you walk through the door jar and you walk into there, you will be overcome with a sense of a feeling, physical feelings of like sinus pressure, like sinusitis, like you've gone up 4 altitudes and you feel like I'm feeling my eyeballs are feeling like there's pressure behind the sinus cavity pushing your eyeballs outward. Other people have described feeling very, very uncomfortable, feeling sharp pains in their body, empathetic. I like to sometimes consider it empathetic, residual empathetic stab wounds from the murders. Other people describe just feeling very uncomfortable, and then there are other times you walk in there and it's as calm as a summer day, just as quiet and as non-affecting you as possible. I was going to say, what was your experience when you went in there? Did you feel anything, any anxiety or pressure?
You know, when I went in, my whole my approach was just to be an observer.
Right.
Well, that's pretty much what I do with the show, and I'm just there to observe.
Right.
And I left. I was just following the twins, and there was one other lady. I forgot her name.
Sally Richards.
Right. I think it was her assistant.
Right.
And they were walking through the house, so I was following them. And the twins, when they were there, they said they could feel something in the room. And I stood kind of by the door because it's the walkway 3 feet comfortably, so I was just kind of standing at the door.
Right.
So I was just kind of looking and seeing what was going on, and they were saying that they were feeling very uncomfortable.
Right.
And I was just looking, and I guess in my state of mind it was I'm just here, I'm looking.
Right.
I wasn't really sensing, being in that that place of awareness, other than I'm just looking at my camera, make sure I'm looking. So at that moment I was just focusing on them, but they felt very uncomfortable, which was very interesting. But I did want to bring up a point that you had brought up to me, that the murders actually happened at the other property.
Oh yeah.
And it's just that your property and your openness to their presence, it's what's bring them around to your dwelling. You had mentioned something like that. Am I kind of getting that right? Well,
yeah, I think that's one component. That's my theory. It's one component of it. Again, my theory is based upon what was told to me by one of the paranormal investigators, Barry Taff, who had been at the house 7 years ago and had been there for literally investigating for 1 year. And what he had said was that it was a combination of things. A, he said in the earth, in that area, that there's a pre-existing condition of a pre-volcanic condition. And he says pre-seismic being earthquake fault line, there is one up Benedict Canyon. But he says that's not what he's registering. He says it is a pre-volcanic condition in the earth there that he said, according to the U.S. Geological Survey, and again I defer to Barry Taff who said this, He said he researched it, and he said that there's a strong chance that there's a lava tube some mile below the Earth there, and that in 10,000 years that could possibly develop into a volcano, and that is what's causing this type of disruption of an electromagnetic field anomaly. He says in conjunction with the way that the house is designed, which is my father's unique design, because the other three houses next to mine have long balconies across the face of the house, where in my father's design there's 2 balconies per floor, and running down the center of it is this 30-foot wrought iron staircase, this gigantic coil, for lack of a better word. And the fact that the house then on the 3rd level has 2 steel I-beams that are 10 feet from this giant staircase, that are then connected by 3 steel columns that are then set into the concrete, which is reinforced with iron rebar, iron rebar, which is then connected to the 13 caissons which go into the earth, some 26 feet deep, which again are reinforced with rebar, which is, again, is magnetizable. He says what's going on is that the energy is going up through the rebar, going through the 3 steel columns, across the steel I-beams, and up through the staircase, creating this gigantic bipole effect, or, for lack of better words, a DC battery. And during one of his investigations, during the Santa Ana winds, he went outside and took a digital air ion counter. And the winds were blowing at about 30, 40 miles an hour, and had been for days prior. And he says, I've got 43 million parts per cubic centimeter positive ions on the outside. Goes in the house and he tests it, and he goes, I don't believe this. He goes, I have 43 million ions per cubic centimeter negative. And he looked at me and goes, it's impossible. I said, what do you mean? He goes, the house has got such a strong electromagnetic anomaly presence that it's being able to take the ions that are positively charged outside and reverse their polarity inside the house. Amazing. He said that in certain parts of the house, he brought out a digital geomagnetometer, which registers the electromagnetic fields in DC fields, which are battery currents. He got 2,000 milligauss positive in certain parts of the house, and in other parts of the house, they reversed polarity and got 2,000 milligauss negative. I said, what does all that mean? I'm not a scientist. He said, let me give you an idea. Anywhere between 300 and 500 milligauss positive is normal for this part of the Earth. I said, what are you telling me? He goes, well, in layman's terms, you've got polarity going from 4 times the Earth's magnetic field negative to the other extreme of 4 times the Earth's magnetic field positive. He goes, and you have an environment that, he says, he's only seen these numbers register when a manifestation of a poltergeist or an apparition would appear. He said an example. He worked on the original Entity case in 1972 in Culver City. He says they registered these numbers when the manifestation would appear. He goes, in your house, for the past year that I've been investigating, the registered numbers are so high that basically any manifestation, any energies, any spirit could come into your house and just pop off and start interacting, because it's such an amenable type of an environment that's conducive for them to play in.
So it's basically a fertile ground, in other words. They can just come in and out as they please because it suits them perfectly. It's like a nice tropical island, per se.
Exactly. It's almost like the perfect settings where if you were doing an incubation for an incubator, basically. Except right. It's not even an incubator. It's more like an oasis. There's what it really would be. It's like an oasis in the middle of a desert that these energies can go to and play.
Gotcha.
And one last thing that Barry said. He says that because of these high electromagnetic fields that he's recorded for the past year, he deemed the house the Mount Everest of haunted houses.
Wow.
And the Disneyland for the dead. And these are not my words. These are Barry Taft's words. But the fact is that he had enough experiences there with the poltergeist, with the energies, that were just crazy beyond crazy that I could tell you about. You just go, what?
Amazing. Look at that. So it's the playhouse for the dead, or playground for the dead.
He said it was like, he says a glass, here's an analogy. A glass is a containment vessel for a liquid.
Yeah.
Your house is a containment vessel for these energies. So when people walk in,
Yes.
everybody, so to speak, has a cadre of spirits that are around them.
Right.
When they come in the house,
They-
these spirits can easily manifest and jump off and do what they want. And Lisa Williams said, to answer your next question,
Yes.
why is Sharon Tate visiting my house and not the other houses?
Yes.
Is because Lisa said sometimes when the house where somebody was murdered in or died in is no longer inhabited by people that they feel comfortable with, they will sometimes vacate that and seek a place where it's much more amenable to their energies.
Wow.
And I have the utmost empathy and sincerest feelings for the victims of that crime,
Right.
for that night 43 years ago, that
Wow.
she knows that I have no interest in exploiting her or trying
Yes.
to push her or tell her what to do.
Right.
If they want to manifest there, I'm like, okay, cool. You guys
Yes.
paid the ultimate price in the most horrific manner, please. Far be it from me to say, get the hell out of my house. I
Right.
feel like, no, chill, stay, whatever you want, it's okay. Type of thing, so.
Fantastic, and that's definitely what we're gonna want to get into in our next segment, because your movie kind of deals around with what happens there. So
Yeah.
Awesome, David. Again, thanks for coming in. Appreciate
I'll be
it.
happy to come back anytime you like. Gus.
All right.
Remember, in Gus we trust.
I love that. In Gus we trust. Thank you.
2016, baby.
All right. I love it. Hey, all right. Well, this is Gus Summers, and you've been listening to The In Show. And we have in-studio guest, Mr. David Oman. And we're going to have a lot more of his story in our next segment, which is going to begin right now. And this is The In Show. And I'm your host, Gus Summers. It's good to be back. We have a great in-studio guest, Mr. David Oman. And we have been talking about his lovely home in the Beverly Hills, which is, matter of fact, a electrokinetic magnet for all the wonderful entities can go and enjoy themselves. So when we walk into your house and we have all these little things attached to us, they go, hey, it's Disneyland. They leave and they go do their own thing.
Kind of, sort of. I've had one experience where this was never more, how should we say, true, where my friend Kenny came out from Kansas City, and his brother had just committed suicide a couple of weeks earlier. And he was there for 3 days, and we were anticipating some type of an occurrence from his brother, some type of a sign. Well, nothing had happened for the first 3 days and first 3 nights. And it was midnight, I think it was a Thursday night, and he was leaving 6 hours later at 6 in the morning to drive back. And we were upstairs, and he was talking to me. He went on the balcony. I said, look, I'm going to go downstairs and feed the cats. So I went to the second floor. And as I'm feeding the cats, I'll never forget this, I've got the scoop of the food, and I'm putting it into the bowl. I hear this kaboom, kabang. I was like, what the hell was that? I didn't know what happened. I run upstairs, and as I come up the top of the stairs, I turn to the right, and I look, and I see one of my sofa chairs literally flipped over on itself. And I look to the right of that, and I see Kenny on the balcony, sitting with a cigarette, shaking like a leaf on a tree, and I'm going... And I'm just getting, I was like a little flabbergasted, saying, what the hell happened? So I said, Kenny, what happened? And I'm kind of upset. And I don't know what's going on. I'm just getting off the handle. And he goes, I said, all right, wait a second. So you didn't, he goes, I said, you didn't flip the couch, the sofa? She goes, no. I said, and then I stopped and said, oh shit, I'm getting upset at the wrong person. So I got a hold of my senses, and I said, okay, calm down. I said, I can see he's shaken up. And I said, Kenny, I said, what happened? He goes, I'm on the balcony, and I'm smoking a cigarette. And, you got the 2 sofa chairs that are angled like this. I said, yeah, they're angled a little bit pitched out. He goes, well, one of them, the one on the left, turned, straightened out 6 inches, and shot back 3 feet, hit the runner, that's where the sliding glass door is, to go out to the balcony, and flipped over. And I'm like, I said, I was just feeding the cats downstairs. I was there for less than 10, 20 seconds. The next thing I hear is bang, bang, bitch, bang, bang. And he goes, yeah. He goes, that's what you heard, was the sofa chair hitting the thing. I said, oh my God. And I looked around. I said, oh, that is so wild. And I said to him, I don't get it. He goes, well, who do you think this did that? And I said, I have no idea. And I thought to myself, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, who could possibly be the responsible party for this? So I'm thinking, searching my mind, going like this, going, okay, who did this? And I'm not saying it out loud. I'm going, who the hell pulled this off? Sharon? Is it Sharon? And I swear to God, out of the blue, I heard this voice say, his brother. And I went like this. I shook my head and I said, okay, I just heard a voice in my inner ear. I don't know, but I looked at him. I said, I just heard a voice in my inner ear. And I said the words, your brother. And he looked at me and he said, you didn't know my brother, did you? And it's like, Kenny, we've known each other for a year. I've never met you. We've never met. We've only talked on the telephone, blah, 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 I said, no, I've never met your brother. He goes, he was a practical joker. And I sat, then I started to put one and one together, and I said, practical joker. Oh, fit the piece of the puzzle fit right in. It was like smack. Well, that answers all my questions. So he looked at me and he goes, oh my God. He goes, that was him. And he says, he finally settled into his brain. He goes, oh, that son of a bitch. He said he waited to the last 6 hours for me to for me to be goosed. That son of a you-know-what decided to goose me. Right? I said, I can't believe that. That's him. He goes, that is him. And I'm looking, I said, how do you feel? He goes, and he became from pale white. He got flushed and he started saying, oh, that son of a that son of a bitch. He goes, that's him. He's just letting me know he's okay. And he was all right. From that point on, I said, you have any problems with him? He goes, no. He goes, no, I'm fine. Now that I understand who it was. And he started laughing. He goes, he started thinking about all the times that his brother had basically goosed him and punked him. And he goes, that's just his way of letting me know he's all right. And he felt totally fine with it. So it's one of the examples that not everything that happens in my house is at all related to or interconnected to the Sharon Tate murders.
Right.
But there are times where we have been visited by specifically them, and I've heard in the same fashion I heard his brother's voice. It's his brother that somebody else. We had a time when some people over, and it turns out that the woman was somehow connected to Sharon Tate when she was a little girl. That her family and Sharon's family used to hang out together in Texas, and I invited them over for dinner. This woman and her husband and her daughter and two friends, and at dinner, in the middle of dinner, a glass of wine, 3/4 of the way full, slides across the dining room table in front of the 7 of us. And I'm like, I sat back in the chair and said, okay, I've seen everything.
Yeah.
And everybody else at the table's like going,
what's going on?
Well,
What's happening?
And then the father, I'll never forget, sticks his head under the glass table, which is glass, and is looking for some kind of a wire or a magnet or something to move the glass across. I said, there are no tricks in this house. I said, if it happens, it's not something that I've done, and nor would I allow it to be done in my house, because I am the utmost of integrity. I want to be real, because as I said to my friend yesterday, if I go and create some fictitious, fraudulent activity or fake something happening here in the house, the trust bond between myself and my audience is destroyed. Right. And you can never regain that. And I personally hate liars. I hate tomfoolery that's provided to us as fact or as authentic and real. To me, if it's real, then it's real. If it's fake and it's entertainment, then it'd be fake and entertainment. But I'm not going to go out there and discredit myself and my house and fraudulently make stuff up about the house.
Right.
That's why I've had other people that have come in that have written me letters saying, this is what I experienced 6 months after they were there.
Yes.
And I like that. I like the fact that, hey, I'm not selling anybody any stories. I'm just telling my story and other people's stories.
Right.
If they come to the house and it happens to them, then it's just more facts, more credibility. I don't need to fake anything. It's happened too many times.
Right.
For me to need to fake anything. And I've got photos if you'd like me to show you some of these
Matter of fact,
pictures.
we got a few minutes before break. I know you brought some photos. Yeah, let's show those.
Yes, I took a picture. This was on the 35th anniversary of the murders. By the way, which camera should we put this to?
That one's perfect, but if you want to get it on the streaming one, yeah, perfect.
I want you guys to see this as well.
There you go. It's a little delay, but yeah, go ahead.
I just don't know where the hell I'm supposed to...
right there.
Right there? All right, good. This is a picture that was shot on the 35th anniversary of the murders with 35 millimeter high-speed film, 800 speed as a matter of fact. So there's a negative. This is actually on the negative. I think we're getting some reflection from the plastic, but let me take this out and I'll put this right here. You tell me where I'm squared in there.
Yeah, perfect.
Now you see those two blobs of light that you can see right through, Gus?
Right, yes.
That shouldn't be there.
Okay.
So you can actually, if you can see this, it's also on my website, you can see the couch and you can see the outline of the couch.
Right.
And all of that. Those are on the negative. And the burn doesn't go anywhere else but right there. And I've had this photo analyzed and looked at and the negatives examined. And the camera is this rinky-dink piece of junk camera I bought at Target literally 5 hours before we did the investigation. It only has one camera setting, one lens. It's focus free, and that's all it does. It just takes pictures. And that's what we captured. I also have this picture that was shot with my friend's camera. And again, this one is got this crazy weird stream of light, blue light. Well, people have said, oh, that's your gosh darn camera strap. And it's like, well, except for the fact that my cousin who's in the foreground was videotaping, and we watched the videotape, there's no way in hell that we had put anything in front of the lens to capture that. So the videotape corroborates what I said, that it was not faked, and that was done, again, with my camera. This picture was shot with my friend's 35 millimeter camera, again, that night, 4 hours later, in front of what was the Tate Gate. This, again, is 2004. And he captured the same thing. Again, that crazy stream of blue light.
Right, I see it. So
that'll give you an idea of the fact that this is real, and this can be looked at on the negatives as well as the photographs. Those are just a few of them. On my website, we have pictures and videos as well, if you guys want to take a look.
Yeah,
and on
you
YouTube, look under David Oman, and you'll find my stuff.
Awesome, David. Yeah, thanks for bringing. I mean, you didn't have to. You brought evidence. You brought your personal experience. That's fantastic. Again, thanks for coming in. But I want to definitely also talk about your movie, which deals about this. I know we kind of we digressed a little bit, but we still got one last segment. That's awesome. All right, hey, again, thanks for coming in. Hey, all right. Well, this is Gus Summers, and you've been listening to The In Show, and we have in-studio guest, Mr. David Oman. And we're going to have a lot more of his story in our next segment. So you hang in there. We'll be right back. And this is The In Show, and I'm your host, Gus Summers. It's good to be back with you today. We have a great in-studio guest, Mr. David Oman. And we've been talking about his home located at a private drive just a few hundred feet from the infamous Sharon Tate property. And you actually made a movie, so now here we are. And the movie, just so poignantly, is called
House at the End of the Drive.
And that is the gate.
Well, that is not the gate. I couldn't do anything like that.
Okay.
No. I went to my neighbors across the way on Bella, and you can actually see the gates in front of my neighbor's house. That's the gate that we used for House at the End of the Drive.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And obviously for the postcard, which you folks can see out there, that's houseattheendofthedrive.com.
So tell us about it. Tell us how that came about, obviously, besides living down the street from the house.
All right, I guess I might as well just let the cat out of the bag. The original story, House at the End of the Drive, is not, was more or less, it was...
Is it inspired by?
It was inspired by Sharon Tate.
Okay.
And the murders. About 8 years ago, I was walking down the street, the driveway, thinking, what am I, got to come up with something to do financially. And I remember thinking to myself, saying this terrible crime that took place down the street, nobody cares less about the victims. I mean, we've gone to the place where we call the murders the Manson Murders. Last I checked, he's one of the ones that's still alive. So the fact that we have degraded this and these individuals to nothing more than a footnote to history, that I felt like, besides the fact that I live on the driveway and the house was haunted, and I felt a lot of people had relayed to me that they felt it was Sharon and the victims, that I wanted to do something unique for them, and that was to write this story and pay homage to their memories. And I also realized that if I stuck with the original storyline and Charles Manson and kept these players in this kind of story, in my story, that I would be tied to the historical context. Personally, I'm not one of these people who likes to watch movies where you've taken historical situations and you've created an dimensional situation there. That, to me, I can't do that. I find, and everybody does that with Star Trek and Quantum Leap and whatever. I just chose not to do that. So what I did was I created this story about a guy who buys a house on a private drive, and I fictionalized the murders. And what I did was I kept the basic structure of the Sharon Tate murders and kept true to the murders, with a few minor adjustments. And the murders, my murders are called the DeWitt murders, and DeWitt was the name of the producer who lived in the house in my story, which parallels the Sharon Tate murders. And his name is Timmy DeWitt, or Teddy DeWitt, and Teddy is basically the Roman Polanski character, and his girlfriend is the Sharon Tate character. And what I did was I kept true to Sharon. I used her photographs and had my makeup artist, take the girl that was the actress that portrayed the Sharon Tate character, made sure that she looked a lot like Sharon and was dressed and made up to be like Sharon. So there was no question about who it was. And a lot of people said that I've been doing this to exploit the murders. The exact opposite is what I've tried to do. I try to not exploit the murders by bringing more attention to Manson. So we have one male character and 3 female characters that are the murderers. However, my character, Henry Charles Packard's motivation has nothing to do with race riots, has nothing to do with bringing attention to Manson. And that's as far as I went with it. I kept it really tight. I brought in a Jay Sebring character instead of a hairstylist to the stars. My character is the costume designer to the stars. I brought in the Abigail Folger character as a heiress to a restaurant chain, not to a coffee empire. I took out Stephen Parent, no offense to him and his fans and his friends and family. I just thought that he was the person that deserved the least amount to be at that crime scene. And as everybody has said, he was at the wrong place at the wrong time. Had he left 5 minutes earlier, he would have been fine. And I didn't pay homage to Wojciech Frykowski, Roman Polanski's close childhood friend. I just couldn't fit him into the picture. But I kept everything else like that. So the story is very interesting about a guy who buys a house on a private drive, which was once part of this huge estate where these terrible murders took place 43 years earlier, the DeWitt murders. And his house is haunted by these victims, and also by the murderers, who seem to be traveling through time through a time vortex and are basically still quite alive. And so this has nothing to do with the Manson murders at all. But again, it pays homage to Sharon and the rest of the victims without devaluing their historical significance. And if anything, it portrays them in a very, very positive light. So again, I'm able to talk about the murders and reminding people of the victims without bringing any attention unnecessarily derived to Charles Manson and the rest of the clan and the family, because that's the last thing I want to do.
Right. And it was definitely just to, like you were saying, to bring the focus back to the victims and off from the people who perpetrated the crime.
Exactly. And be that as it may, people have already decried me on Facebook, on YouTube, on MySpace for years. So I invite them all to protest and to come out there when the premiere comes along, and picket in front and voice your opinion. And then after you've done that and you've chilled out, come see the movie and then tell me how wrong you were about your feelings about me exploiting the murders. I mean, I love the publicity and the attention that they will generate from me. So please, I want the protesters and those people out there that think that I'm a piece of garbage and exploiting the Sharon Tate murders for profit to come out and protest and picket the premiere. I'm inviting you wholeheartedly to come out there. It would be my pleasure to talk to you and actually have you come and see the film. And if I'm wrong, I'd even consider refunding your money if you think that I'm still exploiting the film after you've seen it.
But it sounds like, right, like you had mentioned, that it's the complete opposite.
It
you
is.
just use the structure of it, well, and especially since it's only 150 feet, you said? 150
Yeah.
yards? Or
150 feet from my house.
from your house. And they seem to enjoy what happens at your home. They go and they visit, and they have all this this playground there, as you mentioned.
Yeah, it's almost like summer camp for ghosts. One person said it was like, they can hang out and they can do what they want. It's like, there was only one occasion that I took umbrage with them, and that was about 3-4 years ago. I got an electric bill, and my usual electric bill is about $200, so it's $100 a month. And this one was $550. I, to say the least, blew a major gasket. I took the bill, and I'll never forget, I marched down the staircase to the second floor, walked all the way down the hallway to the very end to the cinder block wall, and I sat there in the service porch, and I said, "Now hear this. In my right hand that I'm holding clutched here is a bill from the Southern California Edison, from the Department of Water and Power. And I said, part of this bill is a $550 electric bill. And for the past 2 months, I have noticed the television being turned on in the middle of the night, lights being turned on in the middle of the night, and other different little electric problems going on where appliances or circuits are being blown." I said, and I, in my hand, in this hand with this bill, am telling you now, I will not ever again see the likes of this kind of a bill produced by spirits or by unseen forces in this house. I said, furthermore, we have got to come up with a gosh darn little bit of an arrangement, living arrangement here. I can't afford you, and if you do this, I swear to God, I am going to get the world's greatest psychics and the world's greatest exorcists and get your asses banished out of this gosh darn universe, let alone my house. I said, I will not stand for this. I said, we must get some ground rules down set here straight. I said, I can't afford this. I am flesh and blood. You are not. I have to pay the bill out of my pocket, which is part of flesh and blood land. You listen to me. Unless you're going to pay this bill, stop jerking my electric bills off. I said, like Rodney King said, he said, can't we all get along? And I said, look, I said, I don't have a problem with you guys appearing. I said, Jay was kind enough to make his appearance a couple of weeks ago, a couple of years ago in the middle of the night. I said, and he had some respect. He wasn't all bloodied up. He looked pretty much like he did when he was alive, except for the fact that he was in shades of white and shades of gray and darker shades of gray and the like. And I said, and he didn't look all butchered up, which I would have assumed. He would have looked hacked up like he did when he was killed. And he couldn't have looked more salient and more than just alive. Just fine. So I said, if you guys want to appear as a spirit and manifest as an apparition, ground rules. I don't want to see any gosh darn severed heads bopping around across the gosh darn in the middle of the air, bopping across in front of me. I said, I won't tolerate that. I said, if you want to appear as an apparition as yourself in life, please be my guest. But don't do it from behind me so that I whirl around, I turn around, and I see a spirit, and you freak me out. I said, I don't like it with a person that's alive.
Right.
I said, if you're dead, I said, just manifest right in front of my very eyes in front of me. Don't do it off to the distance behind me and let me know you're there and then make me go, oh, somebody's there, and turn around and see you. Do it really amicably. I said, I respect you. You can respect me. I said, otherwise, I said, if you want to goof on some of my friends and people that visit the house, that's fine. I said, but don't hurt anybody. I said, it's one thing if you want to touch them, grab them, and let them know that you're there, that's fine. Whisper in their ear, but don't try to hurt somebody. I said, we're all friends here. I said, and again, I defer too. I will contact the world's greatest psychics and the greatest exorcists to get you banished if you cross the line. And since that momentous day, nothing really as bad has happened. You know, I've had some objects move from one room to the other, stuff disappear and reappear.
You did lose your washer and dryer?
Yeah, my washer and dryer a couple weeks ago. Funny thing is that when the washing machine was literally 3 in the morning 3 weeks ago, it ended up being on its face. And it's almost impossible because it weighs around 350 pounds. After I found out that to put it back on its side, I realized that somebody had taken the hose out of the evacuation line, out of the wall, and had pinched it underneath one of the legs of the washing machine, which caused the water to back up into the washing machine and make it top heavy so it flipped over. But again, nobody lifted up the washing machine since I'm the only one who lives there, and I'm the only one, when my friends come in, they don't do the laundry. I do their laundry because I don't want anything done. And I don't recall lifting the washing machine up and putting the hose out of the wall receptacle and putting it and pinching it with the machine. So it was one of those crazy things that happens that I blame on them, and I told them. However, in hindsight, since I got this new replacement washing machine that's used, My wash is taking less time to get done. It's less expensive. So to be honest, the spirits knew exactly what the hell they were doing, and it's to my benefit. I have a brand new used washing machine which works better, and it's going to actually save me money in the long run, both water wise and electricity wise. So I have to say thank you to the spirits that caused that to happen, because it's a windfall for me now.
They were telling you it wasn't her fault, it was your washing machine's fault for your $500 bill. Love it. David, again, thanks for coming in and, bringing your pictures, your stories, and there's just so much when we talk. There's so much to discuss. I'm glad you're able to come into the studio. Thank you again.
My pleasure. Have me anytime you like. I'd be happy to come back and visit.
Of course. Thanks again. All right. Well, this is Gus Summers, and you are listening to The In Show. And we have in-studio guest, Mr. David Oman. And we talked about his home, just a few feet away from the horrible Sharon Tate murders. And, of course, all the activity that is going on there. And definitely look for his film, House, at the end of the drive, where you'll be able to see some of what we talked about today. Well, definitely follow us on theinshow.com, where you'll be able to see this interview and see what else we got going on all around. And remember, Gus, David, and all these little ghosts have left the building.